Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to talk about my own personal top 5 mice in 2021. So anybody who has been following my channel, I don't necessarily like doing top 5 videos or top 5 lists, top 10 lists, or what have you, just because all of us are so different. We all have different grip styles, and even me personally, I feel good on certain shapes and certain mice on one day, and then the other day I just feel better on other mice. It's just one of those things that when you have different shapes, your hand kind of desires something different on a different day. But for me personally right now, my top mouse is the Pulsar Xlite with those super glides. I think that it performs extremely well in game. I gave the Pulsar Xlite my #1 recommendation for a wireless mouse, ergonomic mouse in 2021, and that holds true today towards the end of the year. The switches in Mouse 1 and Mouse 2 are absolutely phenomenal. They are Kill 8.0s, and my build quality is tremendously good. I have no issues in any of those respects at all, and it does have a top-performing 3370 sensor. This is a custom version from Nacho Customs, FR on the bottom for fresh reviews, and the super glides on the Pulsar Xlite are very unique, and I think it's one of the best attributes of the mouse. After moving towards glass skates, they are very different than the Lethal Gaming Gear glass skates. These skates are very, very effortless and fast whenever you are applying any sort of momentum behind your movements. But when you slow down, my mouse just feels absolutely glued. And my mouse isn't moving, it's not wiggling. It is very good for slow tracking and just having absolute crosshair placement in game. I think that it is a very unique experience, one that I have personally never felt. It is, again, extremely fast on the uptake, and then as you are kind of slowing down, it is just glued to this polyester surface, the Woogie 2. It does feel quite different across different cloth pads. But a very, very enjoyable experience, and one that I think is going to change how a lot of us play and the mouse market moving towards the future. We've got glass skates coming from Lethal Gaming Gear, like on my G Pro Superlight, and I'm sure hopefully we will see more glass skates and implementation from Pulsar themselves. I do want to show you guys some gameplay of the Pulsar Xlite. This is, again, currently my top mouse for my own personal play. And I am using the Woogie 2 and, of course, the glass skates. Let's check it out. The mouse that I would probably put in my second slot is the Steelseries Prime or Prime Mini Wireless. I think the texture of the mouse is fantastic. The magnetic switches that they have in Mouse 1 and Mouse 2 feel absolutely amazing. Some of the most poppy switches that I have had to date, and everything on this mouse just feels like quality. The build quality is insanely good. You can't get this thing to creak at all. I think it has some of the best PTFE skates out of the box, and even though a lot of people are scuffed about the modified 3335 sensor, I had no issues with the sensor. It felt just as good as any other mouse that I own, including the Superlight, the Viper Ultimate, a top performing sensor in my personal opinion. Build quality is phenomenal on Mouse 1 and Mouse 2. The only thing I didn't like were the very, very thin and not so protruded side clicks, but honestly, once you start playing a lot with the mouse, it becomes a non-issue. I mean, it is something that I use in every game I play. I utilize my side switches, and I did not have any issue with its implementation on this mouse at all. I think my aim on the Steelseries Prime Mini Wireless is probably one of the best that I have personally performed in game, and that is why I give it my number 2 slot for my top mouse in 2021. And up next, I have the G Pro Superlight. This is definitely a mouse that I had a rough history with. I had to get a lot of different copies of the mouse because the earlier batches, I just had continuous issues with mushy side clicks or very, very, very bad side flex on Mouse 1 and Mouse 2. After a lot of iterations of the batches have released, I did get a copy that had nice feeling side clicks, didn't have a whole lot of flex on Mouse 1 and Mouse 2. Still a bit, but not as much as it was on the initial release. I did modify my mouse, and the modifications that I feel necessary for my own use with the mouse are definitely grips. I have the BTL grips on the mouse right now, and I feel like it just gives me a conscious awareness while I'm using the mouse as how much my fingers are moving, because I can feel my fingers moving across the textured grips, and it helps me maintain a consistent grip on the mouse that usually and typically I'm not able to maintain a consistent grip on the G Pro Superlight. Now that I am able to maintain a grip on the G Pro Superlight, I do think it is a very well-performing mouse. You will see a whole lot of pros using the mouse, and certainly a lot of them are sponsored to use the mouse, so, you know, keep that in mind. But it's got a top-performing sensor. It is very, very lightweight and just feels very consistent when you put continued time on the mouse. I do also want to point out that there are new core pad grips. I do like these more than the BTL grips. They're both very, very good, very high quality. But these core pad grips feel absolutely phenomenal, and I would highly recommend you guys check these out if you have a G Pro Superlight at lethalgaminggear.com. Also, the skates on the G Pro Superlight out of the box are not my favorite. I did replace them with glass skates from Lethal Gaming Gear that they sent me, and I honestly think the Lethal Gaming Gear glass skates are insanely good. They are very, very fast, and certainly depending on the pad, they are going to provide you a whole lot more speed, but once you get used to it, you really do feel like you are in total control of your movements. It is not something that is hard to control, in my personal opinion, and I do like that the initial friction kind of just gets cut a lot. So movements just feel more effortless, and everything just feels very, very good as far as tracking and even flicks. Just something that is very, very different than PTFE, and something that I enjoy and would have a very hard time going back to as far as PTFE skates. The Viper Ultimate has also had a rocky start. A lot of people had issues with their switches in Mouse 1 and Mouse 2, but since then, Razer always, it seems, has an ear on what the community is speaking about and what the community wants, and they did come out with those V2 optical switches, and they feel very, very good in the mouse. I think the switches feel extremely responsive when you are in game and you're hitting Mouse 1 or Mouse 2. The side switches feel good. They could be a little bit more protruded and also a little bit bigger. They are also on the thin side, but again, I had no issue with the side switches in game. I think the rubber on the left side and right side make the mouse feel very grippy and very nice, very high quality. I have never had an issue with the rubber peeling or coming off, and the PTFE skates out of the box are quite good. You don't necessarily need to replace them, but certainly third-party skates will provide a nicer glide than the Razer default skates. And the mouse right now I think is like $89 with the dock. It was probably one of the first mice that came out with a dock. And the dock is just so simple, so easy to just put your mouse on, start charging the mouse. It's very convenient and something that I really, really enjoy. The weight is very well balanced in the mouse, and it's a top performing sensor, and I feel like the shape is one of those shapes where you can really get any grip that you want on the mouse, and I feel it's a very good default shape, right? So if I'm ever feeling off one day, I feel like I can swap to the Viper Ultimate and just have a good, enjoyable experience. The mouse that I would put in my 5th slot is the Razer Orochi V2. I do not believe that you can get a better mouse than the Orochi V2 in 2021 for $49.99. The mouse does have a removable cover, and you can either use a AAA in the AAA slot, a AAA modified in the AA slot, or a AA battery in the AA slot to kind of get a different variation in weight. These switches are those modified Razer switches, and they just feel extremely good in game. And the overall build quality for a mouse that's $49.99 is superb. The skates out of the box are actually quite good. You don't need to necessarily replace them. And the mouse has Bluetooth as well as the 2.4 gig wireless. The skates, I think, are a nice size and nice shape. I don't have any issue in that regard. And again, the side clicks feel extremely good. Mouse 1 and Mouse 2 and the scroll wheel feel extremely good. And I think that the Razer Orochi V2 is one of the most versatile mice out of the entire list because of its size and because of its low nature. I have the most inner hand maneuverability with this mouse, and all grips feel good. I can rest my index finger and my middle finger on Mouse 1 and Mouse 2 flat, and the mouse feels good. I can have an aggressive claw, and the mouse feels good, or I can have a relaxed fingertip, and again, the mouse still feels good. So it's one of those versatile mice that I think works for all hand sizes. I think it works for all grip styles, and just performs extremely well at $49.99 with a top performing sensor. It is actually very hard for me to pick a top 5 list for everyone's purposes, because certainly what I am playing better on a particular occasion changes over time. The Logitech G303 Shroud Edition I can play at a top level, likewise with the XM1R, equally as good as I play on the Pulsar Xlite, which is again currently my main mouse. The reason why I haven't put these in my top 5 is simply because these shapes are things that just don't work for a whole lot of people. I think the G303 Shroud Edition is going to be a tough mouse for people with small to medium hands. Certainly there are people with smaller hands that might find a comfortable grip with the mouse and play at a top level with the mouse. But two shapes that I definitely see a lot of complaints not being able to grip the mouse appropriately, especially with the hump on the towards the back side of the XM1R. So two very good mice, top performing sensors in both, and the switches in the XM1R just feel so good. This mouse, when it works at a top tier level and is utilized by a whole lot of pros across a whole variation of competitive games. So definitely don't exclude the XM1R, even though it is a wired mouse. Don't exclude it from your list. The Logitech G303 Shroud Edition, I do think we're going to see a whole lot more pros using this mouse. I think it is just one of those grips that kind of, with larger hands, forces your two fingers on the right side to kind of curl and become more of a claw grip. For me, in my review, I said that actually makes me play a bit better when I am using a claw grip, and certainly that is the case. When I try to palm this thing, I am certainly not playing very good, but when I have a very aggressive grip on this thing, it just feels very, very good. But again, a shape that just is not going to work for a whole lot of people, an issue, again, that the XM1R has. So guys, that is really it for my top 5 list as far as my top picks for 2021. I do think that there are a whole lot of good mice that were not discussed in this video, and just because I did not discuss them doesn't mean that they could not be a top mouse for you. Currently, I am playing my best on the Pulsar Xlite, and again, I do think that the glass skates that are being utilized on the mouse, as well as the Lethal Gaming Gear glass skates, are going to probably change the market and people's playstyles a whole lot more than some of the variations of certain shapes and certain mice that have been hitting the market. And I cannot stress enough for you guys to at least give glass skates a try, whether it be on the Pulsar or the Lethal Gaming Gear glass skates. I do think that it is worth your time and attention, because for me, I personally have not played better than since swapping to the Super Glides on the Pulsar Xlite. I hope that helped, guys. If it did, please leave a subscription to the channel, and I'll see you guys in the next review. Peace.